Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's live update. I'm Chancellor Donde Plowman. This week, we announced the new spring academic calendar. A lot of work and consideration went into what became the calendar ultimately. This campus has a calendar committee with involvement from lots of people who helped to determine this calendar. And we will be talking with Provost John Zomchek about that in a moment. We also started our comprehensive testing program, which I've been speaking about the last couple of updates. As we discussed on Tuesday, we're taking a three-pronged approach to testing. We're continuing the PCR tests, which are the nasal swab test. We're also adding pooled saliva testing, and we're monitoring wastewater for traces of the virus. These new tools will help us tremendously in allowing us to track the virus on campus, sort of taking a 20,000-foot view look at what's happening, where there's intensity, and what we need to pay attention to in terms of community health. We're also hopeful that the testing will allow us to lessen our reliance on other tools, like the restrictions currently in place on campus. Dr. Burks, who was with us last week, was very complimentary of our approach to planning here and also reminded us to encourage students to participate in the testing program because it'll only be as useful as we get test samples to look at. So do students. If you're asked to give a sample, like a pooled saliva sample, please do so. It's critical to the success of this strategy so that we can keep our campus as a whole healthy and know where we need to focus our efforts. We'll be discussing our comprehensive testing and the early results next week, and I'll be eager to share those with you. So before we move on, I want to first of all thank all of our students in Massey Hall. Asking you to move out of your residence hall in the middle of the semester was a significant disruption, but you did it. And you did it with a good spirit and a positivity that just was contagious. And also, I understand you left the residence hall in excellent condition. So thank you for that. This was a huge help to our folks in housing as they are working now to prepare the residence hall for students who are going to need a place to isolate. To the students who were in Massey, your willingness to make this adjustment for the betterment of the larger community truly exemplifies the volunteer spirit. I'm really proud of you, and I'm grateful to each of you and to your parents as well, who were really super supportive and cooperative in this effort. So today, now in addition to Provost Zomchek, we also have Dr. Greg, Dr. Greg from the Health Center, and our big surprise guest is we have Assistant Vice Chancellor and Dean of Students, Shay Kidhouse. She is here to talk about the importance of keeping our students engaged and some of the opportunities that are available to them. But first, before we do that, I want to look at today's data. So let's look at the numbers. We currently have 412 active positive COVID-19 cases. 398 of them are students and 14 are employees. So our cases have been dropping every day since they peaked on Sunday. Today's totals are the net results of 49 new recoveries. So that's 49 cases that moved out and up to the upper left, where it now says we've had 894 recoveries. And we had 15 new cases that reported yesterday. So we like the look of that line. We're going to talk to Dr. Greg about that in a minute. So here is our graph of self-isolation. So this includes quarantining, people who've been named as close contacts or who are awaiting test results, as well as people isolating because they've tested positive. So as of today, we have 1,540 people in quarantine or self-isolation. And you can see now on that last bar, the bar has come down. We still have more residential students self-isolating than we do non-residential students. So of that total number, 1,433 are students. And as I said, the majority of those students are in quarantine or self-isolation at home or in their residence hall or off campus. Okay, so let's look at let's talk about the next item I want to bring up with you. I really would like Dr. Gregg to help us think about those numbers. It's really good to see them going down, but Dr. Gregg, what do you see in this data today? What does this all mean?
Well, thank you, Chancellor. I'm happy to be with you again this morning. When we look at our overall numbers, there's really two ways you could choose to look at the data. You could look at it from an optimistic standpoint. You could say, wow, these numbers look great. Our total number of active cases are coming down. Our recoveries are going up. This is exactly what we want to see. Or you could look at it from another standpoint, which is probably more likely. And that is intentionally, fewer people are choosing to be tested. And with fewer people being tested, we're unable to identify those who are infected and others who are their close contacts. Unfortunately, that's a trend that appears to be statewide and not limited to our campus. The pitfall with this is that as more undiagnosed infected individuals, who in the case of college-age population are more likely to be asymptomatic, as they continue to circulate in the community, then the number of individuals who are more likely to suffer severe, potentially life-threatening complications of the infection will start to rise again. This is not a time to let down our guard. If we do, we're at risk of seeing a significant resurgence of infected individuals with a greater number of hospitalizations and deaths. The asymptomatic spread of this infection is really our Achilles heel, and we need our community members to take the lead on doing the right things, staying home when they feel ill, participating in our testing efforts on campus, reporting when they know they are a close contact of others that are infected, timely completion of our self-isolation forms, adhering to all health and safety guidance. Our Knoxville community, especially those at greatest risk of complications and death, are depending on others, us, to help keep them safe. That's truly an opportunity to put the needs of others above those of our own, and that's what being a Tennessee volunteer is really all about.
Okay, so thank you for mentioning that. Dr. Burks mentioned that when she was here, how much Tennessee's testing numbers had gone down, and testing's the way to handling this pandemic. So let's keep participating. Let's talk. Can you share with us about this comprehensive testing strategy? What are you expecting to see? And we hope to have data next week that we can report back. So what are we looking for? What do you think we're going to see?
Well, if everyone participates as requested, we'll likely see that there are more cases in our campus community than what we're currently seeing. Optimistically, that may not hold true, but that'd be great news. Next week, we'll review some of that initial data with you as we start to get those numbers back.
Okay. So we have talked many times about our contact tracers. They're working so hard. We've hired more of them. Part of their job is to talk to students in isolation or in quarantine to track how they feel, as well as to reach out to close contacts. What trends are the contact tracers finding?
So, Chancellor, we really appreciate the efforts of our contact tracers in the contact tracing program that we have here on campus. We reviewed much of their data and discussed the conversations that they've been having with students, faculty, and staff. What they've identified is that the greatest number of positive cases in close contacts are not occurring in controlled settings such as the classroom. Rather, it's occurring in the extracurricular environment. These are primarily related to social circles or friends groups, and in turn, the infection is then taken back to their residence, where then those with whom they live are exposed. And this holds true both for on and off campus residents as well as faculty and staff. One of the problematic trends that our contact tracers are noting is in the delay of our self-isolation form submissions, which also directly ties back to the spread of infection. Many are more often reporting to us after they've been symptomatic for a few days or after they've been tested days ago. Then when they prove to be COVID-19 positive, they've already transmitted virus before we're able to intervene. Time is of the essence. The window for maximally effective COVID-19 contact tracing is typically the first 24 to 72 hours, and delayed information makes hitting that window impossible.
Yeah.
Many too seldom associate their mild symptoms with COVID-19. They often want to believe that their symptoms are tied to something more benign, their headache and their mild congestion, or just their allergies, or they're not excessively fatigued. It's just stress from work and class. They continue with their normal day in, day out activities without acknowledging that their mild illness may actually be COVID-19, and then they're spreading it all the while. If we have any opportunity to intervene to stop the spread of infection, as well as the ability to provide our important services, then being attentive to these mild prompts is important, and then quickly completing the self-isolation form is imperative. Most members of our community are doing the right things, but some are not. And with this infection, we all have to be involved in stopping it.
You know, we talked about that last week, just how if to everyone, if you just feel like, oh, it might be my allergies or, you know, it's just another headache, don't assume that. Please go get tested. Just a friend of mine just recently was with someone who, unbeknownst to him, that person had woken up that day and said, gosh, my allergies seem to be acting up. But the person went to work all day and was out and about with people, lunch, whatever. And it wasn't just his allergies. And so all the people who are now close contacts, unfortunately. And so if you feel bad, stay home, go to the health center, get a test. That hasn't changed, right?
That's right.
Okay. All right. So now let's talk about the academic calendar. Setting the calendar is usually something people aren't that interested in, but right now during COVID, it is something people are interested in. So yesterday, we announced the academic calendar for spring. And there are some big changes in it as we work to plan for the safety of our entire volunteer community. Those changes include a later start date, much later than we normally start, more towards the end of January, an earlier end date, in some ways mimicking what we did in the fall with trying to, in the fall, where people are going to be encouraged, they're going to be moving out of the dorms by Thanksgiving. And we're not going to be taking a spring break this year during COVID. So Provost Zomchik, can you walk us through the calendar and the process for coming up with this calendar and these decisions?
Thank you, Chancellor. I'll be happy to do that. Several weeks ago, I charged our Vice Provost for Enrollment Management, Carrie Aldridge, who oversees the Office of the Registrar, and your special assistant for all things COVID, to solicit input from various campus stakeholders and to make recommendations to you and to me about the spring calendar. So they engaged the Campus Calendar Committee, which you mentioned earlier. It consists of about 30 faculty, staff, and student representatives who typically work on the calendar, but also they checked in with the Council of Deans, the Faculty Senate leadership, and of course, also engaged the Office of the University Registrar before presenting two options for consideration. We chose the option that puts the first day of classes on January 20th, which is a week later than it had been planned when we set the calendar for spring 2021 last year. And as you noted, we've eliminated spring break. We've eliminated a no class day on April 1st, but we've kept a spring recess day on April 2nd. Classes will end now on April 20th, and final exams will be held from April 22nd to 24th, and again from April 26th to 29th. Official graduation date will be May 1st, but commencement details and dates are still to be determined. So that's kind of the process that we went through to get the recommendations to you and ultimately to make the choice that we made.
So thank you for that. I think that I want everyone to appreciate the fact that there was pretty widespread input into that. Tennessee has a practice of always doing that when it comes to the calendar. Can you talk a little bit about what considerations went into where we landed? We ended up choosing this option. What were the considerations that made this the most attractive to us?
So all along, the most important considerations that we've been following have been, how can we best fulfill our educational mission, while at the same time safeguarding the health and well-being of the entire campus community? I mean, that was first and foremost. So we followed the advice of our health experts, Dr. Greggs and others, and we proceeded under the assumption that conditions during spring semester will be the same as those we are experiencing right now. We felt that this was the correct way to proceed. And with that assumption in mind, we made the decisions to start a week later in January. Starting a week later not only moves us a week further along in flu season, which could have a kind of compounding effect on community health, but it also gives our students, faculty, and staff an extra week to recover from the fall semester and as well to prepare for the spring semester. So that extra week of no classes was very attractive to us. And we chose that because both for health reasons and for the sort of mental well-being of our students and faculty and staff. I can tell you that the toughest decision we had to make was to cancel spring break. It was tough because we know that spring break provides much needed time for our students and faculty to catch up on work and to recharge before that final big push toward exams that happen at the end of the semester. In the end, however, we decided that the only responsible action for the spring semester was to keep our students here, canceling spring break. And by doing that, we limit opportunities for them to take COVID to their home or other communities, or when they return to bring it back here. It was a really hard choice, but we decided in the end a necessary one given the current health conditions. We did keep that spring recess day in the calendar about 10 weeks in, and my office will be messaging faculty to consider the absence of spring break and the absence of that period to recharge as they put together their syllabi for spring semester.
Thank you for that. So I really appreciate the deliberations that went into it. I think we've landed in the right place. Hopefully, we'll have a vaccine next year and we'll be looking at a nice spring break again. I am really encouraging everyone to think of this break after Thanksgiving, after students have completed their coursework, their final exams. Let's all take a deep breath and find a way to reboost our energy and come back in late January ready to take on another semester at Rocky Top. I want to switch gears here and talk about student engagement. We're so fortunate to have our Dean of Students here with us. You know, I recognize all these decisions, every single one of them we make have impacts on the people we're here to serve, impacts on our students. And we're working very hard to support them. And we've talked a lot about what a difficult and unusual time this is. There's been nothing like this in the 226 years we've been here as a university. Some students may find it harder to get involved, to create connections and to have meaningful relationships with their peers when we're having to social distance. So I want to ask Dean Shea some questions here today about how to maneuver around quarantine and isolation and all of this. So let's start with Dean Shea, what is your office seeing and hearing from students this fall?
Well, thank you, Chancellor. It's good to be here today. And as you mentioned, it is a very atypical start to the fall semester. And, you know, normally college is stressful and anxiety producing without a pandemic. So given all that's going on, our students are looking for ways to cope and to strategize on how they can connect. You know, we've seen an uptick in our phone calls through 974 HELP, which is our phone line that really allows students to ask for help when they're in distress. They're experiencing grief of what used to be. So when you think about the connections, the ability to move about the campus, the excitement that usually comes this time of year around football. And that's whether it's a new or a continuing student. So new students probably had this vision of what college would be like. Our continuing students remember what college was like last semester or last year on Rocky Top. So I think grief is something that we're really hearing. And, you know, ambiguity is difficult for all of us. So I think the questions, the unknowns are really what feel the most challenging for our students. You know, Dr. John Somchik just mentioned the academic calendar and those changes. I think our graduating seniors still have questions, you know, about what does that mean for me in May? I was talking to a first generation college student yesterday who's, you know, a little anxious about what does that mean? My family wants to celebrate. And then I think also we're hearing a lot of logistical questions, especially either students who are in isolation and quarantine or those who anticipate, you know, at some point what happens when I am in isolation. So they're looking for, we are working on that centralization on how we can best support students in isolation. And so I think, you know, to summarize, it's really how do I balance virtual learning, in-person learning? How do I balance that ambiguity and the stress around it? And then how do I become engaged? Those are some of the key things we're hearing.
So let's talk a little bit about that last point you just brought up. How can students get involved? I'm imagining upperclassmen students kind of already know how to do that a little bit, but let's think about freshmen or upperclassmen, people who've transferred. What are ways students can get involved even while we're in this pandemic?
Sure, and I think that has been a significant question for our students. So I want you to know, students and families, that there are more than 330 registered student organizations. So that's something that you can access through VolLink. And we know that students have different needs and interests. So there are organizations around research and around connecting to the campus community, around politics during this election year. So that's an easy way that you can build connections, most of which are virtual right now because that's where we are. But there are lots of opportunities. And I think the misconception is maybe that you know, all student orgs are on pause, but there are 300 that are fully functioning and looking to gain more members. So I would encourage you to check out VolLink. We also want you to know that, students to know that there's a student engagement app, and this is through the Vol Life app. So for continuing students, this is different from the University of Tennessee app. It's a separate app. So you would go to the Vol Life app to download that. And then within that app, you would look at student engagement. And there are more than 100 events planned for this fall semester. And it's in real time, so it's been updated all the time. So I encourage you to continue to check that, and you can register for those events within the app. There's some giveaways, so you never quite know what you might be missing if you're not connected to that app. You can even create notifications so that you know what's happening. And just to give you a snippet, if I can, Chancellor, of some of the things that are happening right now. Last night, there was an outdoor movie through Student Success. LASSO, which is our Latin American student organization. It's Hispanic Heritage Month. So they're doing a Cooking with LASSO. A few days ago, it was National Guacamole Day. So they're teaching us how to make guacamole. So that's a really timely thing that students can engage in. On Monday night, we have another outdoor movie. We are even doing Adulting 101, spicing up those ramen noodles, because students, we know that still continues to be a top item on your pantry. So we want to help you spice that up. T-Rex, our recreational center, has fitness classes outside. They've adjusted to this context. So outside classes virtually, and also you can serve virtually. So we are known for our service. We are the volunteers. So through the Jones Center for Leadership and Service, students can engage in virtual service opportunities as well as small in-person opportunities. So that's just a snippet of some of those ways that students can engage.
Let's talk about those in isolation and quarantine. Tell me about quarantine with the dean. I see it all over social media and it looks really fantastic. So what's that?
Yes, so this is our response as the Office of the Dean of Students to our students who are physically in isolation and quarantine or who just may feel isolated. We are known on our campus as making a big place feel small. And we want you to know that we care about you, especially during this period of time where you can't physically leave your space. So Quarantine with the Dean was designed to create an opportunity for students to log in to Zoom on Thursdays at 5:30. We had our first one yesterday. And it's really a space to be upbeat. So this is kind of a downer, this whole pandemic thing. So we want you to log in, participate in trivia. Last night we had all kinds of questions about campus, and the winners, the top 3 winners, get giveaways to Grubhub. So it's contact-free food delivery that you're able to have access to. So there's also a Quarantunes playlist that I'll be tweeting about. So we've created a playlist to just lift spirits and to lighten the load, because it's a lot to navigate. And on October 6th, Chancellor Plowman and our provost and the academic deans are joining us for Quarantine with the Dean. So that'll also be a great opportunity for students to connect with your academic deans and academic colleges.
Okay, hey, thank you so much, Dean Shea. You've got so much going on. There's lots of opportunities for students, and I want to reinforce what Dean Shea said, and to let all of our students know we care deeply about you as a person and as a student. Big part of coming to college is all about you as the person, and we are here to help you succeed in all of that. I want to thank Provost Zomchik for being here today, Dean Shea, Dr. Gregg. Thank you to everyone watching. We are getting there. We're moving forward together. We're all in this together, and I'm just grateful for the work that everyone's doing to make this a meaningful and rich semester. One we'll never forget, the pandemic of 2019 and 2020. So I look forward to seeing all of you for our next update, which will be on Tuesday. So stay safe and go Vols.